Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Devin Shanahan Show. Due to a police involved shooting of an armed black man that took place 2 nights ago, we have seen riots and looting break out in Philadelphia for the last 2 nights. Last night, it got extremely violent and extremely bad, as you can see here in this photo. Essentially, what happened, to kind of fill everyone in case you haven't been paying attention, 2 nights ago, police responded to a call about a man who had a weapon. They show up to the call. There's a black man with a knife, and he begins to turn on police officers, and he attempts to use the knife on police officers, at which point he is shot dead. And as expected, we see the Black Lives Matter, we see Antifa, we see all these leftist groups and just, thugs, criminals in general. They take to the streets, they burn, and they loot. There are some reports that the local Walmart in Philadelphia was looted by over 1,000 people. There's reports that 11 people were shot, which is what we're going to get into today. And I mean, it's absolutely insane. These people don't care about the facts. These people don't care about, any video that could come out. They don't even wait for a video. They don't wait for a dash cam or a body cam or any of that. None of the facts are relevant. The fact that this guy had a knife and was trying to stab police officers, none of this is relevant to these people. They just, they're just rioting and looting, and that's all they care about. All right, so let's get into the news. Looters were shooting looters. 11 people shot in Philadelphia overnight during riots. As the riots spread in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, following the police-involved shooting of a knife-wielding suspect, 11 people were shot while looting businesses. Fox 29 reporter Steve Keeley was filming the scene outside one looted business when Philadelphia police told him, quote, looters were shooting looters. Police also told the reporter that a 50-year-old man who had filled up his car with stolen goods was then carjacked and had all the stolen items stolen from him. In the midst of all of this, 11 people were shot. That's kind of funny that this guy's filling up his car with like TVs or toaster ovens or whatever the hell he wants to, steal, right? Could be Pokemon cards for all I care. And he's filling up his car with all this stuff, and then another guy comes and steals it from him. That's pretty funny. But, things like that are funny, but a looter shooting looters, that's not funny. I mean, this is serious stuff. This stuff needs locked down. We need, this is literal insurrection. So let's go on. As the Daily Wire reported, law enforcement officials also said that the situation in Philadelphia had rapidly gone downhill. In response to the riots, the City of Philadelphia Office of Emergency Management sent a warning to residents, quote, the Philadelphia Police Department is requesting that all residents in the 12, 16, 18, 19, 24, 25, and 26 districts remain indoors except when necessary. These areas are experiencing widespread demonstrations that have turned violent with looting. So, in case you guys didn't know, widespread demonstrations that have turned violent with looting, there's a name for that. It's called a riot. And, I mean, this is nuts. You see this on, MSNBC, CNN, all these left-leaning media outlets. They come out and they say, oh, mostly peaceful protests. I mean, they're not even covering this. Don't get me wrong. You won't even see this in the news at all. But when it first started, right after all the George Floyd stuff, you saw, oh, mostly peaceful demonstrations, mostly peaceful, Black Lives Matter. They're just protesting all this systemic racial inequality, and it's utter crap. It's utter crap is what it is. I mean, first of all, if any person with a brain looks at any of the statistics about policing and law enforcement in any city around America, there is no statistic out there that supports the fact that there is systemic racism. That's it. That's end of story. There's no statistic at all. Now, I mean, there's things like, oh, blacks are locked up at a higher rate. Minorities their communities are policed higher. But at the same time, you got to put those statistics into perspective. And usually, the perspective is things like, oh, minorities commit, black males in particular, commit 50% of violent crimes in this country, and they only make up less than 13% of the population. So, that might explain the fact why police are running around in African American communities more than they are. It makes sense that the police would be policing areas that are bad. There's no reason for a police officer to go sit out in the Hamptons and police them. They're not doing anything wrong. They're just all in their houses, keep it to themselves. He's going to go into the lower income areas, the areas with higher crime, and he's going to police there because that's where the crime is going on. And that just so happens to be mainly minority populated areas. There's a lot of white lower class communities as well in this country, but most of the time that's lower, lower class minority communities. And there's something to be said to that. There's an argument to be had there, certainly, as to why minorities are not able to, why minorities have a lower average income. Why why do you walk into a bad neighborhood and it's usually made up of minorities? I mean, there's an argument to be had there. It's another video on its own. I personally think it has to do with the nuclear family, but the lack of parenting, lack of fathers in the home and a father figure in these neighborhoods. But I mean, that's a topic for another story. That's more of a psychological, societal, cultural problem. But yeah, I mean, I just think the way that the media is covering these things is completely disgraceful. They go online and they say, or they go on there, Don Lemon on CNN and Rachel Maddow on MSNBC. They'll go, and all the others too, Joy Reid. They'll go out there and they'll say, oh, 93% of these, protests have been completely peaceful. And they just draw the line there and act like the other 7% doesn't matter. And I mean, a good thing to put it in perspective is O.J. Simpson was 93% peaceful the night he killed Nicole. So, I mean, it's just a little bit insane, right? The Titanic was 93% dry, the night it sunk. So, it's a little bit insane. But the White House had something to say about this, and this is the quote from them. The riots in Philadelphia are the most recent consequence of liberal Democrats' war against police. Law enforcement is an incredibly dangerous occupation, and thousands of officers have given their lives in the line of duty. All lethal force incidents must be fully investigated. The facts must be followed wherever they lead to ensure fair and just results. In America, we resolve conflicts through the courts and the justice system. We can never allow mob rule. The Trump administration stands proudly with law enforcement and stands ready upon request to deploy any and all federal resources to end these riots. Yeah, I agree. And I mean, Donald Trump and the Trump administration has been saying this all along. They've been saying that, they've been offering the National Guard, they've offered federal law enforcement officials to any city that requests them. They're not going to go in there, without the city requesting them, because it's a politically poor move right before an election. I mean, if Donald Trump just invokes the Insurrection Act and sends in all these, essentially military law enforcement, if he sends them in, the left is going to say, oh, this is a fascist takeover of the country by Donald Trump. So it looks bad. And not to mention, I mean, this country is founded on federalism. It was founded on states' rights. So if the state wants help from the federal government, Donald Trump is willing to give it. If they don't, so be it. It's your state. And I completely agree with that. At some point, though, you would think that some of these Democratic run cities would ask for help, but they're not, because they don't want to give Trump that win. So, all right, let's go on. At least 30 police officers were injured by rioters in the city as well, the Daily Wire reported. One officer was hospitalized with a broken leg after being hit by a pickup truck. Yeah, so that was the whole pickup truck incident was the first night, so 2 nights ago. Not last night, but the night before. And essentially the police had formed a line and they were pushing back protesters. Typical police tactics that you see. They throw a bunch of tear gas, they form a line, and they push them back, right? And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a pickup truck comes wildly plowing through the police line. One officer was hit, at least, broken leg, it looks like. But yeah, that was a couple nights ago. But I'm not going to go on about all this article. I think we've covered it. Oh, I am going to jump into this one thing, though, about Elijah Schaffer here first. Then we'll go on. So, a reporter for Blaze Media, which is a Glenn Beck media conglomerate, essentially. A reporter for Blaze Media said he was, quote, jumped by Black Lives Matter rioters while covering the situation. Quote, so, as you can see, it's kind of hard for me to talk right now because I got jumped outside of a Five Below that's currently being ransacked and completely looted. And you see to my left here, this is an Eye Encounter store. We have a, quote, amazing nail spa, and also right over here, there's a Walmart that's been completely gutted, said the reporter Elijah Schaffer. We are here across the river in Philadelphia, right by Chick-fil-A. What happened was, I just went into the Five Below just to see what was going on with some of the looting, and I was jumped by Black Lives Matter protesters who immediately started punching and kicking me, Schaffer continued. One of them punched me directly right in the lip. I'm going to have to go to the hospital, I think, to get stitches in this lip because it's just obviously painful. But this is what happens in the current state over the killing of Walter Wallace Jr. the other night. So Elijah Schaffer, he's a reporter. He was the guy who captured most of the video related to the Kyle Rittenhouse shooting. He's pretty much like, he started out sort of as like a man on the street reporter, so he was always out there covering all the riots and stuff like that. And he also has a show called Slightly Offensive, very similar to my show. And He works for Glenn Beck over at Blaze Media. So he's a good guy, good reporter, and he got jumped last night. So that's bad. It's bad news. Always bad. All right, let's go on. Another article here. BLM is making a martyr of yet another man convicted of abusing a woman. More information has come to light about Walter Wallace Jr., the man who approached Philadelphia police, while brandishing a knife, and whose seemingly justified death at their hands has ostensibly sparked the latest round of rioting. As the local ABC affiliate in the city reports, Wallace was a, quote, aspiring rapper whose central themes in his music were guns and shooting people. That's always good. We are also told that he rapped about social justice, though it is not clear how someone can be fascinated with shooting people while simultaneously concerned with social justice. Yeah, obviously. Wallace has a lengthy rap sheet. He had a prior arrest for assaulting a police officer, though it's not known whether the officers responding to the 911 call shortly before his death knew about the incident. Doesn't matter whether or not they knew about this incident. I mean, if someone is running at you with a knife, it doesn't matter what their prior convictions are. You have the right to defend yourself. Perhaps more noteworthy is his 2017 conviction for robbery and assault. Reportedly, that crime involved, quote, kicking down the door of another woman and putting a gun to her head. If this sounds familiar, it's because George Floyd was convicted of doing almost exactly the same thing, except in his case, he was forced his way into a woman's home, put a gun to her stomach rather than her head. Wallace's actions are also reminiscent of Jacob Blake, who allegedly broke into a woman's house, raped her, and then stole her debit card and her vehicle. And her kids were in that vehicle too. He did not have, I believe they're his kids as well, but Jacob Blake did not have custody. So I'm not going to read the rest of this article, but I mean, the main theme here is the left props up these people, and whether or not these people are innocent, whether or not there was any sort of, police injustice here, which I tend to think there wasn't. But even if there was, these people should not be martyred. You go to Minneapolis, is it? Yeah, you go to these cities where these so-called black victims have been, quote, victimized, those words to the left. You go to these cities and you see giant murals of them painted everywhere. You see these giant, like, memorials almost memorializing these people, especially with George Floyd. And I mean, it's just insane. These are not the type of people you want to be martyring. And at the same time, they're tearing down statues of Abraham Lincoln, the man who freed the slaves. So it's a little bit insane. It's crazy, but that's my thoughts on it. If you guys like these videos, remember, like and subscribe. I'll have some more coming up later today, some more interesting stuff. But thank you very much.